Good morning, girls. In the last few classes, we were discussing about the early Vedic period. That is a period when the Aryans settled in the region of the Sapta Sindhu, that is the region of the seven rivers. And we also discussed about the political organization and the social life during the early Vedic period. Now, today we'll be learning about the later Vedic age. So, we'll start with the class. The period from 1000 BCE to 600 BCE, when the Aryans moved from the region of Sapta Sindhu to the Gangetic Valley, is known as the later Vedic age. So the later Vedic age or the later Vedic period is the period when the Aryans moved from the region of the Sapta Sindhu, that is the region of the seven rivers, to the Gangetic Valley. This period is known as the later Vedic period, and it was between 1000 BCE and 600 BC. So between this period, the Aryans moved to the Gangetic Valley, and this period is known as the later Vedic age. It was during this period that the three Vedas, namely the Samaveda, Yajurveda and the Atharva Veda, and their branches, the Brahmanas, Aranyakas, and the Upanishads, were composed. So we had learnt about the Vedic literature, and Vedic literature, it had different classifications. We learnt about the four Vedas, the Rig Veda, Samveda, Yajurveda, and the Atharva Veda. So among these four Vedas, the last three, that is the Samveda, the Yajurveda, and the Atharva Veda, were composed during the later Vedic period. And also its other classifications. There were other three classifications, that is the Brahmanas, the Aranyakas, and the Upanishads. We had discussed about all these four classifications in detail. So these three other categories, these three other branches, that is the Brahmanas, Aranyakas, and the Upanishads, were also written during the later Vedic period. The two great Indian epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, were also composed during this period. That is why this period is also known as the epic age. So we have two great Indian epics, that is these the Indian great epics, that is the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. These two Indian epics, they lay the foundation of our culture, foundation of the Indian culture. So these two epics were also written during this later Vedic period. And that is why this period is also known as the epic age, because it was these two epics were written during this period. Now we'll move on to the political organization. Political organization which existed during the later Vedic period. In the later Vedic age, the Aryans established bigger kingdoms in place of the tribal setup of the earlier period. So we had discussed in the early Vedic period, we had discussed before that during the early Vedic age, there were several families. The family was the smallest unit, and these families, several families, would form a village, and a number of families, many villages, they formed the tribe or the jana, and each of this tribe, they had a head who was known as a Rajan. So this was the setup, this was the political organization during the early Vedic period. But when it came to the later Vedic period, the Aryans, they established larger kingdoms in place of the tribal setup. In the early Vedic period, there was a tribal setup, but when it came to the later Vedic period, they began to establish bigger kingdoms. The formation of bigger kingdoms made the king more powerful. So when bigger kingdoms were formed, the king became more powerful. Kingship became hereditary, and kings adopted such lofty titles as Adhiraj, Maharajadhiraj, and Samrat. So when these kingdoms began to occur, and when the king was more powerful, the king started to adopt, he started to take more lofty titles. Lofty means very grand titles. He started to adopt, he started to take grand titles for himself, such as the Adhiraj, the Maharajadiraj and Samrat. These are some of the lofty titles, some of the grand titles which the king started to adopt. To show their power and prestige, the kings used to perform a number of sacrifices like the Ashwamedha Yajna, the Rajasuya sacrifice, and the Vajapeya Yajna. So the king became very powerful, and in order to show his power and his prestige means reputation. In order to show that the king was very powerful and he had a good name, these kings, they used to perform many sacrifices, many offerings, such as the Ashwamedha Yajna, the Rajasuya sacrifice, and the Vajapeya Yajna. These are some of the sacrifices, some of the offerings which the king used to offer. Now we'll discuss about these offerings, about these sacrifices. The first one is the Ashwamedha Yajna. During this yajna, the ruler would lose a special horse accompanied by soldiers for a year to wander at will. So under this offering, under the Ashwamedha Yajna, it is a horse sacrifice ritual. It is also known as a horse sacrifice ritual. So under this sacrifice, a horse was released to wander for a period of 1 year, and the horse, it was accompanied by soldiers. So the king used to release a horse to wander for a year along with few soldiers. The king would lay his claim over all those territories over which the royal horse moved unchallenged. So this horse, it was allowed to move on its will. It was allowed to wander on its will, and every territory wherever the horse was able to wander unchallenged, where there were no challenges, wherever the horse did not face any challenges, all those territories came under the power of this king. To lay his claim means to say that something belongs to you. So the king would declare all the territories declare all the territories under him. All the territories where the horse could move without any challenges were declared to be under the king. If the horse was captured by another ruler, it meant war between the two kingdoms. So if this horse was captured, if it was killed or captured by any other ruler, then a war was declared between these two kingdoms. At the end of the year, the horse was sacrificed during the yajna, and by the end of the year, this horse, if it was not killed or if it was not captured, it was sacrificed during the yajna, during this offering. So this is the Ashwamedha Yajna, or the horse sacrifice ritual. Then we have the Rajasuya sacrifice. It was performed to confer supreme power on the king. So this sacrifice, it was performed, it was done to give the king his power, to proclaim, to declare the supreme power of the king. It was the sacrifice, the offering was done to give the supreme power, the supreme authority to the king. It was connected with the king's consecration. This offering, it was connected to the king's consecration. Consecration means it is a process where something is declared as holy or sacred. So during this sacrifice, the king was given all the supreme power, and it was used to during his consecration, during the consecration of the king. So this sacrifice, it was performed by ancient kings. Ancient kings used to perform this sacrifice, the Rajasuya sacrifice, and these kings who considered themselves powerful enough to be an emperor, if the king considered him powerful enough to be an emperor, he used to perform the Rajasuya sacrifice. Then we have the Vajapeya Yajna. The term Vajapaya is a combination of two words, Vaja and Paya, meaning rise and drink respectively. So the word Vajapaya, it is combined with two words, Vaja, which means rise, and Paya means drink. As the name suggests, the Vajapaya sacrifice was believed to bring in a bountiful crop and plentiful water. So this sacrifice was meant to bring in plenty of crops, good harvest and plenty of water. Bountiful means plentiful. So to bring in a good harvest and to bring in more of water, to bring in plentiful water, the Vajapaya Yajana was performed. So these are the three yajanas, the three sacrifices which were done by the king. As the kingdoms grew bigger, the king appointed a number of officials to assist him. So we discussed that the Aryans, when it came to the later Vedic period, they began to form bigger kingdoms. So when the kingdoms began to become more bigger, the king used to appoint officials under him, officials to help him and to assist him. The popular assemblies lost their earlier importance. Now we learnt in the last class that during the early Vedic period there were popular assemblies. Popular assemblies were formed to keep a check on the powers of the head and to advise the king, to keep a check on the powers of the king and to advise the king. So these popular assemblies, when it came to the later Vedic period, these popular assemblies, they lost their importance. The Sabha and Samiti came to be dominated by chiefs and rich nobles. The Sabha and Samiti, they were the two popular assemblies. They were among the two popular assemblies. So when it came to the later Vedic period, these Sabha and Samitis, they lost their importance, and chiefs and the rich nobles, the rich people who belonged to the ruling class, the chiefs and the rich nobles, they began to control the Sabha and the Samitis. Women were no longer permitted to attend the assemblies. Now, during the early Vedic period, women had equal rights. They had rights equal to that of men. So, but when it came to the later Vedic period, women began to lose their rights. They were no longer permitted to attend these assemblies, attend the popular assemblies. This is about the political organization during the later Vedic period. Now here on page 40, we have a description about we have the story of Ramayana and the story of Mahabharata. These are the two main epics, the two Indian epics that we discussed, which were composed during the later Vedic period. So here we have the story of the two epics and the importance of these epics. So you can just go through the story. This is not much important. You can just go through this story, to the story of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. So we learnt about the political organization during the later Vedic period today. We'll stop with this, girls. Thank you.